there is a borderline morality in terms of what AI should do and how people use AI, right? For
Okay.
good or for worse. And I think that there may be perception, right? Let me just say perception of AI can be easily used for good and just as easily used for bad is triggering a lot of anxiety and confusion to anyone, right? Anyone involved. So I think in that sense, that's unique.
That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, Chris Fanchi, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale. Hello and welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're really excited to have today's guest, Ming Chan, Emmy award-winning technologist, product strategist, and founder of The First Movement. His journey spans 2 decades of building experiences for everyone from early-stage startups to Fortune 100 enterprises. Ming, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you for that kind intro.
I'm glad to have you here. So I like to start with everyone's personal journey. Let's go back to the beginning. What first got you into tech?
I think it has to go back to all the way of how I grew up. I grew up in Hong Kong. So, and I'm very fortunate to grow up in a family full of love. And one of the things is actually my mom is actually a pianist. And how I got to tech is far, you would think that music and tech is completely different. But I think one thing I learned since I was young, I was always fascinated in terms of how music was composed or how music was even to create it, right? And in some way throughout my journey in my career, I find some similarity in terms of, at the end of the day, tech is 0 and 1s and put together. And by putting 0 and 1 in different ways or creative ways, you are able to create tech or even tools or application that change people's lives. So to me, I think that exposure to music from my mom perhaps dove me into that journey into tech. But with that said, I did study math and computer science in college. So jumping into tech and software and where I started in Silicon Valley makes sense to me as well too.
Yeah, definitely. So did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Did you always want to run your own business? Or was that something that came on
Not at
later in
all.
life?
Not at all. Not at all. I like to think that I accidentally fell into the entrepreneur trap. and I'm sure as a fellow entrepreneur, right? Like it's not all rainbows and butterflies and all green path, right? As an entrepreneur. So for me, it was really just I got the opportunity to kind of work with very different clients in early days of my career, large clients, small startup individuals, and through working with different people, I just wanted to feel like I'm contributing to something, I guess, a little bit cliche, but it's really about I want to be part of something bigger than myself. And so for a period of time, I was interviewing and working at big companies, small companies, and I couldn't find what I was looking for emotionally and almost, I guess, psychologically. I just didn't feel like I belong in the place. So one thing led to another. I'm like, and if I can't find something, I might start something. So that's how I kind of fell into the entrepreneurship. And that was almost 20 years ago. And then on, that was history.
So in your LinkedIn profile, you mentioned getting yelled at by Steve Jobs. What
Yeah.
impacted that out on your career? What were you working on at the time that led to that?
Yeah. Um, and again, I was very fortunate to be in that position, being yelled at. I guess you would never think that being yelled at is a fortunate situation, but yeah. So I working on a smaller design agency as one of the technical lead at that time. That was like early, I think late 90s and early 2000s. That was actually right after Steve Jobs came back to Apple. And we were working with them on a few projects and quite a bit of projects. And one of the biggest project was Apple Music and Apple Store. So as a technical lead, obviously I was involved pretty hands-on in terms of creating the experience of the Apple Store. And I just remember that, we don't usually have meeting with Steve Jobs, but when we get to a certain point, we would have meeting with him. And I was just brought in as a young kid, as part of the team in the meeting that basically shared some of the creatives. And I just remember not only myself, right, but the whole team got yelled at. And because I was the one that actually built it, right? At least a prototype. So of course he targeted me and say some very interesting, strong words. And as a little kid, right? Well, I call myself a kid, but as a newly grad, that was quite an experience. Looking back, obviously I was very appreciative and the impact that had in my life as well too. So yeah, but that was the story. That was definitely one of my more interesting story of my life for sure.
So tell us a little bit more about that impact. How did that impact your decision to eventually start your own business? Did that play a role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned that I started the business not really chasing money, if that makes sense, right? I'm not, I wasn't good. Like money is great, but that's obviously always one of the motivators. But it's the freedom and it's the sense of belonging that I was looking for. And one of the things that as I look back at the experience, even right afterwards, right, that experience with Steve Jobs or even working with Apple in general, right, it's that passion, right? It's that he believes so strongly in something that he's willing to yell at someone that he never met before, right? You can call it however negative words, right? But one of the emotion that I got through is that passion really came through, right? And I think that was that passion or that was that idea, a concept that as a technologist, right, as a technical guy in early 2000 or late 19s, right, we weren't, at least I felt like we weren't really being appreciated or viewed that as creative, right? And I think that was that vision or that passion that I believe that, hey, we have something to say as a tech guy, as a tech person, even in a world dominated by design and right brain marketing people, right? We have something to say. And I think that, and we have something to contribute, right? I think that maybe that belief or that vision definitely led to my decision of starting the first movement for sure.
So tell us a little bit more about the first movement. What did you set out to do with that? What was your mission and how has that changed over the years?
Yeah, and it's interesting, and maybe this might be related, but even the word, the first movement, right, was actually, and I think you mentioned I was heavily influenced by music, and my mom is a classical pianist. So the first movement obviously is a term used in classical symphony. So to me, even the word, the name, why we named the first one actually had something to do with that, right? So we are basically a digital agency, and that term, right, that word digital agency didn't really quite exist back when I started. So when we started, we were pretty much just call it a dev shop, right? A development shop that fortunately I was able to kind of build a reputation within the back in the day Macromedia and Adobe Flash community. And I was consulted a lot. I worked with quite a bit of, you know, bigger brands like Google, Apple, etc., on a bunch of Flash stuff until it got killed. But with that said, it also brought me that reputation of being a Flash application guy who can speak tech, but that can speak tech to non-tech people. So I think the first one was started as that, right? As that, hey, we are a dev shop. We can build stuff. And we can build things we want. But at the end of the day, it's about solving a business problem. We can help you solve a business problem using tech. So again, it's been maybe like 20 years now. The concept and the belief is still the same, right? The word the first woman really embody in my mind creating something, being the first to do something, right? And that's a momentum that's always moving forward, the way I look at it, right? So yeah, right now, even to this day, we still work with larger enterprises and smaller startup. We do dedicate about at least 20% of our resources and time every year working with startup. And the only thing we do, right, digital application or digital product design, strategy, and development. So think of us as a digital consultancy that can actually not only consult but actually build things for you. So that's who we are today.
Okay. So how large is your organization right now, and who are your primary target markets? Who are you working with the most?
Yeah. So most of our clients you can find out on our website, obviously thepersonal.com. But we have always been in the tech industry, I think because of my Silicon Valley background. So I would say right now, 60 or 70% of clients are still in the tech, right? And there are a few that I can probably publicly name, like Cisco Systems, being our still one of our larger clients that we've been working with for over 20 years, actually, before I even started the first movement. Right now, we have multiple offices, and especially with COVID, so we actually been fully transitioned to remote. Our team fluctuated depending on the size of the project. So anything, but we're still pretty small. Even including contractors and work, we have is 25 people at the largest at this point, right? There is something that I think not only us internally, but our client prefer in terms of what we call a kind of small giant.
Hmm.
There is in a little bit of clients, it's a relationship that we're building. It's not only what we build. So the number of people, obviously, we need the number of people to do actually do the work. But also one of the conscious things that we have always done is there could be a case of too many clients. So one we definitely don't want to, while diversification is important, we are at the end it's about relationships. So we do really focusing on only like maybe 10 to 12 clients a year. Anything more than that, we don't do. So that also goes back to the decision of like we still have 80% enterprises and we only dedicated about 20% of the time to startup. And even if more startup come to us, right, we still have to honor this belief that we have in terms of, hey, we were born and we were successful. We have been successful because of the trust that enterprises gave us. We can't kind of we have to honor that trust or that partnership that we have built over the years with all these enterprises as well.
So do you find with that smaller team size and smaller number of clients that it's easier to maintain those relationships and keep those same clients around for the long term?
For sure, there's obviously pros and cons on that, right? It's like putting all eggs in one basket or a few baskets. That's obviously always a business problem. But selfishly speaking, right, I think this goes back to the vision or the goal of why I even started the first movement, right? At the end of the day, I didn't start it and or still running it because of only because of money, right? Money is a again great motivator, it's necessary to do things. But for us, it's not about more money, the better, right? So not only it is easier in my mind that we can manage fewer clients better because you can spend more time on that. I can personally spend more time on it, and I still enjoy doing that, working with people. But at the end of the day, it's really about selfishly. It's like I'm not built personally. I'm not built to manage a team. We have grown. And maybe about 10 years ago, we were about close to 60 people
Hmm.
and that was personally too much for me. It's not that I don't want. I think it's that's a way to let go of things, but I still love what I do even to this day, right? So it's like it's one of the and someone told me that like, hey, you're a different type of entrepreneur, and I'm like maybe. So don't call me an entrepreneur because entrepreneur is one of those things that start thing and don't and just keep starting thing, right? Like to me, I think I've transitioned to, I think I heard the term someone call it, it's like a lifestyle entrepreneur, right? So it's like one of those things that I'm in business because there's a certain lifestyle I want to achieve. And that lifestyle, in my experience at least, I could only achieve if I don't run a huge team. So again, at the end, it's a very selfish thing that I'm doing that to keep our team small and nimble and agile. And personally, yeah, it's a selfish decision and it makes my life easier.
No,
Yeah.
that makes total sense. And I know in entrepreneurial circles, the concept of a lifestyle business is usually looked down upon or mentioned as a
Sure.
negative.
Yeah.
But if it gives you an opportunity to practice your craft, and it sounds like that's really what you enjoy doing, it's the
Yeah.
craftsmanship of it and building things, then
Absolutely.
hey, that's whatever fits, right?
Yeah, I'm still a tech guy at heart. That at the end of the day, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you've been around since the days of Flash. A lot of
Yeah.
technology changes over the years. Have you seen anything like what we're seeing today with AI? And how are you handling the new AI boom as a
Yeah.
company?
Yeah. And I'm sure even doing what you do, you even have more exposure than the impact of AI than we do. But at least for myself personally and our team or even our clients, there's still a lot of misunderstanding or lack of education on what AI is, right? And the interesting thing is we've seen this time and time again, right? Flash was one of those things, honestly, in some sense, right? Flash created a whole new world of animations or application development or even web development, right? And then you have, and there's always, and if you look at history of tech, right, there's always this technology that come out that change people's life for better or for worse, right? You can talk about VR, AR, you can talk about, Flash, you can talk about Bluetooth, and all those things that changes people's life, and change is scary. And I think the difference, and I'm not sure if it's a difference, but I think that the AI is because there is a not only is an unknown thing or misunderstanding of education, but there is a borderline morality in terms of what AI should do and how people use AI, right? For good
Mm,
or for worse. And I think that maybe perception, right? Let me just say perception of AI can be easily used for good and just as easily used for bad is triggering a lot of anxiety and confusion to anyone, right? Anyone
mm,
involved. So I think in that sense, that's unique. But from a pure tech standpoint, right? Like again, any tag you can use it for good or use it for bad. But AI is one of those such an accessible technology nowadays that it can be used for really good or bad. And it's up to the person that actually do it, right? Or leverage it to decide to use it for good or use it for bad.
yeah, absolutely. What are your clients' impressions of AI? Are they coming to you asking for it to be added? Are they concerned about it? Are they just curious? What are you seeing?
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I won't dive into too much into working with enterprises versus startup, right? I'm sure, even you yourself or your audience probably know as much as I do in terms of the difference about working with enterprises that are 800 pounds gorilla versus someone just starting, with an idea, right? I
Mhm.
think the word that I like to use is the tolerance of risk. In my experience, at least working with larger enterprises, right? The tolerance of risk might not be as high as startup. So in terms of what do you want to use UI for, it's a little bit riskier. So where we see the use or asking for AI is probably not as, I guess, dramatic of a usage of AI for so an example, going back to the beginning days of AI, right? Like chatbot, having an AI chatbot, right? That's basically, now we know that's the least minimum thing AI can do, right? And
Mhm.
and I think enterprises obviously bought into chatbot. You can see that now, but I did buy into, for example, generative AI, right? That's I haven't seen enough momentum yet. While it's coming, right? Enterprises from a business standpoint, there's still a lot of risk, a lot of regulation and a lot of again potential risk if you're using generative AI versus and you probably the story of Coca-Cola generating a whole AI video commercial with AI, right? That was
Mm.
good and bad. That's a huge debate, right? So there's a lot of risk factor if you're talking about a brand like Coca-Cola or any enterprises leveraging AI for good or for bad, right? Versus if you're a startup, you are naturally in the business of taking risk. And maybe perhaps your risk tolerance is little bit lower. So from there, working with startup, the sky is the limit, right? It's not only what AI can do for you now. When we work with them, right, it's what AI can do for you tomorrow. So it's like I would say not that it's not forward facing, but it's a lot further pie in the sky, if that makes sense, right? Working with smaller clients.
Hmm. And it's there's an interesting comparison to Flash. You know, the reason why Flash kind of
Sure,
went out of the mainstream is
sure,
because of the security aspect, right? And
absolutely,
I'm
yeah,
sure enterprises are looking at AI with the same skepticism and concern that do
yeah.
we really
It's a good,
understand
yeah.
from a security standpoint and things like that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, right? Technology comes and goes, and a lot of technology comes and goes, right? Like who would have known, like, people spend $1 billion on DVD. Where's it now? And then there was a whole war between like this tech versus this tech, right? And then you're absolutely right, right? No one can really truly predict is AI going to be stay, right? We think it's going to stay, but how much do you invest in AI? Like just like back then, right, to your point, right? Millions or billions of dollars invested into Flash, and then it's gone. So that is a huge risk. And I think what you just described go back to that statement of tolerance of risk, right? And then
Mm,
AI is a great example for that for sure.
yeah. In terms of internally, I mean, I'm sure you've heard about vibe coding, right? Or coding
Mhm.
with AI, using generative AI for
Yep.
coding. Have you considered or are you actively utilizing AI tools for coding purposes? And especially as someone who wants to keep your team smaller, do you see that as a potential route for adding additional clients because you can be a little bit more efficient?
Yeah, I'll be lying if I say we're not exploring it. Absolutely. So, and you nailed it, right? Like I think for us, as a consultancy or even as a development partner or design partner, right? It's really about efficiencies. Speed is one of the things that we have to do, right? AI can do things a lot ridiculously faster than human does.
Mm,
Accuracy, quality, that's a different question, right? So for us, are we relying on AI? No. Are we utilizing AI to help our operation efficiency? Absolutely. Are we helping using AI and not even Vibe, right? But we also use like for example Adobe Firefly, a lot of AI generative design tools, right, for concepting,
mm,
ideation, etc. Right.
mm.
So those are the things that obviously it's going to help us internally to ideate faster, validate ideas faster, get the idea across initially to clients faster, right? I think the idea of velocity is where we utilize AI for, right?
Are you having any of your startup clients coming in, bringing you something that they built themselves using one of these AI coding tools as their MVP or their test case?
You would think so, but I think it's interesting, and I think there's different type of startup too, right? Like
Mm,
somehow we tend to attract startup that do not really have, say, a great tech founder or a tech team, right? A technology team. I think because of my background in technology, at the end of the day, it's our business is word of referral. We don't go out and market ourselves that much. So it's the referral, right? So I think because of my background and my reputation, a lot of the startup founders who came to us look to me, perhaps, or us to help them to supplement or complement them in terms of the tech, right? Okay, I have this idea. Is it feasible? Can you make it better with tech, right? So in that case, while they might know AI and they might do concept and do some AI tool and do a concept for us, but at the end of the day, they don't. Well, we haven't come across that many people that come to us and say, "Here it is," and make it better, right? Because
mm.
the our process is really about like, great, you have a great idea, but a great idea can only take you so far, right? Can you actually execute it? Not only that, but can you execute it with the intent of people actually going to buy it, right? Because at the end of the day, you can build some, but no, if no one wants it, then it doesn't matter, right? So our process is really about validation, about like, okay, it's a great idea. What does that mean? A great idea means someone wants it. You're not building something that no one wants. So how do we go through a process that can validate not only the tech, but the user experience and the features and the concept of, we have this concept about painkillers, right? It's this idea, such a great painkillers that actually help build the get pain of some people, right? If it is, then there's a market, right? So I think that's where and going back to the topic of AI, right? AI can't tell you what people want. AI can take orders, can analyze data, right? There is still a lot of, let me just say, qualitative things that we do in tech that requires qualitative method, not AI method, right? So I think startup founders who came to us understand that. And I think that's why they come to us versus they come to someone else, right?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Absolutely. So back to your business specifically. So what is there a scenario where you see wanting to grow the business beyond where it's at, or do you feel comfortable that this is going to be what you're going to do kind of indefinitely?
A great question. Now you're diving into like life purpose or vision, right? Great. To be completely transparent, of course, there's a scenario that we can grow or we can exit, right? Someone way smarter told me that, and he said you can chase money or you can chase a vision. Eventually, you have to make a decision, right? Is your vision, how much is your vision worth to you? $1? 100 million, whatever, right? There's a price because as you grow, right? As you grow as a person, you have responsibility, you have your life change. So one of the things that, and this is one of my mentors told me that, right? When I started the business and I told him all this, he said, take a piece of paper, write down a number and fold it and don't look at it again. Write down that number. And if that's the number that you think you're going to quit, you think to give up your vision if someone offer you this money, right? So I wrote a number down, and he said, "You know what? Money shouldn't change you. Your vision. So if someone offer you that, are you gonna get greedy and you want more, or are you gonna take that?" So I think that concept or that idea really stuck with me. So to answer your question, yes, there is always a scenario that tomorrow I could be, doing this, but to give up this. And one of the things that even going back to Steve Jobs, right? He's like, there was one of his favorite quote was, "What you love," right? and I think that's uh, after 20 years, right? No, 20 plus years, I still love what I do today. So I have a number, of course, but if someone tomorrow offer me that number, I think it's gonna be really, really hard for me balancing between do I still love what I do versus hey, I promised myself 20 years ago. Do I change that promise? So yeah, it might be hard for me to answer that question, but I definitely can see a scenario that one day if I don't love what I do, or one day that little number and that little piece of paper came to reality, what am I gonna do?
Mm.
I guess fortunately that day is not today, so I don't have to think
Yeah.
about it yet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you also have to think about, what could you do with that number? Like if you
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely right. Yeah,
what doors does that open?
of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, have you ever had your own IP idea? You've been in development for 20 years. I'm sure you've seen ideas come and go. And have you ever stopped and thought, maybe I could do this better. I could build this as a company.
Every single day. No, the interesting thing is, and you're absolutely right, right? Like and I guess we didn't talk about it, but I started my career as a software engineer working for companies and any software company, right? If you look at that, number one requirement, eventually you have to raise money.
Mm,
So I was exposed to that tremendously, and during the dot-com days. And I think when I started the business, one of the things that I told myself is, I'm not going to raise money. So for 20 years, we eat what we make. And if we don't make as much, then we don't eat as much. So I think, again, it's a very selfish thing. There's no right or wrong answer here in terms of whether we raise money or not. But to answer your question in terms of, can I do something better? Of course, like I always think I can do better. And there's so many ideas, but I think we were able to channel that urge, right? Or that eagerness of building something with our client, right? So at the end of the day, that passion of doing something better, right? And we're very fortunate to have long-term clients that trust us and that look at us not just vendor but partner. It's that together idea of they trust us enough to allow us to collaborate with them closely so we can bring some of these, hey, we can do better, but we don't have the money to do this mass marketing. We don't have this money to build all this stuff, right? So let's partner. You have the money. So if you believe in us, we'll give you this idea for free, right? Of course, we charge them. But that's the concept of, I think, in terms of building something, right? I think I've still been able to kind of channel that idea or that aspiration of building something that millions of people can use, right? Because at the end of the day, it's that, right? That is some sort of ego here in terms of, hey, I want to build something, but if no one uses it, then what's the point? So that is a ego for any, and at least I believe, is that you cannot ignore, right? And I think I was able to, and we were able to perhaps partner with clients that are able to feed our ego and actually able to deploy solutions over the years that affect millions of people and billions of dollars, right? Which is something that I would say we are incredibly fortunate to do, right? So,
yeah, very cool. So I'll let you out of here on this. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the start of your journey, what would it be?
yeah, that's funny. I was thinking about that the other day actually, because someone asked me a similar question. I actually asked someone that question about like what should you have done and etc. Right. So I think the funniest thing is, and this might sound egoistic, but I don't think I would change one thing at all of what I've done. But the only thing I would tell myself is if I go back, is like, just trust yourself, invest in yourself, continue to do that, right? Because at the end of the day, I think one of the things differentiation between entrepreneur and not is an aspiring entrepreneur, right? Is someone who has an idea but never really do anything about it. Right? An entrepreneur, whether you succeed, and again, succeed is such a subjective term, right? But an entrepreneur actually actually do something about it, right? So for me, I think looking back, it's that then you have to trust and believe that is some sort of ego or some sort of blind belief that you believe so much in yourself that I'm going to do this, right? And I think and I did that and foolishly. So, and I would say the same thing to myself even back then, right? It's like, you don't have to second guess yourself because as long as you know the consequences, right? Obviously you always may have contingency plan and etc. But really believe in yourself and invest yourself is the way. Then one day you could be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Thank you. So Ming, this has been fantastic. Where can listeners contact you and learn more about the First Movement?
Oh yeah. So our website is thefirstmovement.com. So THG numeral 1ST movement.com. And I can be reached at Ming at thefirstmovement.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on X. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. But again, I'm Ming Chan, and I'm happy to talk tech, entrepreneurship, design, anything digital. Hopefully you can tell I love to talk. So thank you for having me, Chris. And thank you for listening, and thank you for asking all these great questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for everyone that's listening. Please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and as always, keep pitching, keep building, and keep scaling. Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.